mindful of your surroundings, my friends. Treat others as you would like to be treated. Because one day, when you meet your maker, you might find yourself at the Quinn Deckham bar and pull up a seat because you're going to be playing a game of life and death. A chance to go to heaven or hell, reincarnation, or the void. What will it be for your soul? This week's episode was intense. It was the exact opposite of last week's episode, which was frankly heartwarming. This week's episode destroyed me. It ripped me to pieces. It drew tears from my eyes. The writing was that intense. And this week's episode was really not all that different from the other ones, and yet I'm still grabbed in. Every single time they start up a new episode, they introduce new characters. That gives you a chance to get attached to them. And in this week's episode, they were very different from one another. And what I really liked about this episode is when it opened up, they immediately skipped the rules and got right into the game. Our two contestants this week are Misaki and Yosuke. Misaki is a very popular TV personality who has a very large family, and just like the other episodes, her story will unfold as the episode goes on, and her entire backstory is very tragic and sad to say the least. But not to be outdone, there is Yosuke, who seems something like a shut-in kind of nerd. He just likes to play his video games, and he seems to have family issues, mostly with his mother, or his new mother, his stepmother. And that's, of course, revealed as the episode goes on as well. And they are forced to play a game, and this week, our game is going to be arcade. It's going to be a fighting game, and this is basically just a glorified reference to Street Fighter and Tekken and Marvel vs. Capcom and pretty much any fighter that's come out over the course of the entire video game history. But there's a lot of great references. Just the stage they're fighting in looks like the original like Chun-Li stage from Street Fighter 2, and that's pretty freaking awesome. I love that. And I like the fact that they even had their own special movesets, which have their own crazy names and abilities, which of course relate to their extreme family issues and the causes of their death. But what's really extreme is how, in the beginning of the episode, Misaki actually believes that they're on some sort of hidden TV show. That's because she's just so in the know about how TV works and everything. And so she basically just sort of forces Yosuke to go along, play this game, and in the first round when she loses, all of these memories suddenly shoot back into her head about her life, how she started out as a kid in school, and then eventually she got knocked up, had a huge family, and then she became this very abusive TV personality. And it really messes with her head to the point where she tries to make Yosuke lose the next round, and he even tries to not lose, and this really pisses her off. And this is where you really start to see the darkness come from her. And this is another part of the episode which is really messed up too, where the arbiters who run these games, they have these like little devices that have these buttons on them that can sort of like alter how the game is going to play. It can sort of spice things up, so to speak. It can bring out the darkness of people, and it's their job to do it. And even though it seems like kind of like an underhanded, like kind of cheating thing to do, Deckham himself is proud to do that. He feels that he wouldn't be a good arbiter if he didn't do that. So, the second round begins, and things really start to intensify, especially when they realize that they are going to have to continue playing, and Misaki continues to see that maybe if she loses, she's probably going to end up like one of those dead bodies. So the final round is really intense, because there's this scene where she's almost getting ready to come back in the battle, and she uses this special attack, which takes the form of her family, which seems to almost resent her, as you learn in this episode. And this puts a huge smile on her face, but just as she becomes elated, Deckham presses the button and her joystick breaks. And this is where it just delves into madness. Suddenly, it cuts to a scene where she is slamming Yosuke's face into the arcade machine repeatedly to knock him out. And it all ends with him unconscious on the floor, glass embedded in his face, blood all over the place. It is messed up. And then she tries to comfort him after beating the crap out of him, trying to make herself look good. And she realizes she has to finish the game. She gets in there, she tries to finish it, and Yosuke finally comes to, and he finishes the game. And this is where the big bombshell of the episode comes in, where we get to learn about the circumstances of their death. First, there is Misaki, who, like I said, she's a TV personality and she's very abusive. And there's this one scene where she outright just bitch slaps her assistant, and this pisses her off to the point where she ends up attacking Misaki and choking her to death. outright killing her. And that brings us to Yosuke, whose death is just heartbreaking, to say the least. He committed suicide, and it all had to do with his resentment towards his new stepmother. He didn't consider her a parental figure whatsoever, and it's made even more sad by the fact that his stepmother genuinely wanted to have a relationship with Yosuke and even wanted him to call her mama. It's so sad. I can't take it. Like, that's the part of the episode where it's just like, oh my god. This is just too much, man. I can't take this shit. And it all ends with Misaki charging towards Decim, freaking out, getting tied up in his weird piano wire razors, whatever the hell those things are. And it all ends with her basically recounting how her whole life she feels like she's been deceived. And how whenever it seems like it's finally starting to go good for her anyway, it all suddenly comes crashing to a horrific end. The episode ends with both of them accepting their deaths and being embraced by Decim as they are both sent to their brand new destination. Yosuke is sent to reincarnation, and Misaki is sent to the void. Ending this week's episode. So, what's the rundown? On this week's episode of Death Parade, damn, the show has got some intensely good writing. For a show that is based entirely around its one premise and reusing it in nearly every episode, you'd think it would get boring. It's not. There's just something about this series that is really intriguing. The fact that they can introduce a new character in every episode and you can get invested in them, I think that's really clever, and it shows how good the writing for the show really is. The art style and the animation is still really good and distinctive on its own, but this is not a show to really watch too much for the animation. That said, there are some scenes that really stand out. In fact, I really liked the scene where Misaki was freaking out and starting to charge him, and just the realism in the movement when she was tied up by the wires and slammed into the aquarium was just, it literally looked like real life. And I loved the impact of that, and it felt real. But this series is really just about the whole coming to terms with your life and where you're going when you die. And it's amazing how in 1 week it can be really uplifting and make you feel really good, and in the next one it can completely just rip you to pieces. And I especially liked the fact where Decim said, like, they draw out the darkness in people and they take it in. That's like their role, is to take away this darkness from people. And yet they still aren't even really getting into the backstory of any of the characters of the Quindecim and even the people that exist within this weird world. It looks like the next episode is going to get into that, and I'm really excited because there's that one old pink-haired guy that you see in the intro, and then there's that one red-haired guy who has the same eyes as Decim, except that his are orange. And he's awesome in the intro when he rips his shirt off and then that cat jumps up and grabs his button. I've seen that intro way too many times at this point. I love the intro of the show. I love this whole show. It really keeps surprising me just how they can keep this concept fresh with every new episode. So, I love this one. I have no complaints with it. Amazing writing, great style, awesome animation and artwork. And despite the fact that they're still not revealing too much about how the world of the Quindecim works and everything, this was still an amazing episode that if you've been following Death Parade or watching Death Billiards, you gotta check this one out. It's just good anime, good writing, good stuff. I cannot speak more good about this show. It's just so good. I pray it gets a release on DVD and Blu-ray. This show's awesome. Check it out. Good stuff. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Death Parade. Were you surprised by the shocking twist of events in this week's episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did it hit you in the feels? What do you want to see from the rest of Death Parade? And remember guys, if you have not subscribed to our channel, you can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. It's really easy, and you can see all of our latest anime and manga reviews, and even our brand new podcast show. It's pretty awesome. You guys can also follow us on social media like Facebook and on Twitter.